We're going to stay on this theme. There is this saying, of course, that there's no such thing as bad publicity. Is that true in this case? Let's get some insight on whether this is going to affect Donald Trump. Peter Shankman is branding and social media consultant, and he joins me here in New York. Peter, I wonder, I mean, we're very used to that saying. How damaging do you think this is ultimately for Donald Trump, or is he going to be able to sort of spin it in some way that's going to work for him?
This is really starting to hurt. You know, it was 6 months ago, it was a joke. We could laugh at it a little bit. Oh, look at that, he's running, you know. And then he started to say things, and he started to say some more things. And now it's really starting to get a little frightening in terms of the backlash he's receiving, both from a corporate level as well as political. Look, the man is a carnival barker. We know that. He thrives on exposure. He thrives on PR. No matter what he says negative, it seems to help him up until this point. Essentially, up until this point, he's been the Nickelback of politics, right? Everything he says that's negative, everything he does that's negative somehow winds up helping him. He's crossed several lines, though, in the past month or so that will affect him financially because all he has is his brand. What he treads on, how he generates revenue for himself and his companies is through his name, Trump Plaza, Trump Casinos, Trump Hotels, Trump, Trump, Trump. When Trump is now being equated with racism and with potentially attacks on Muslims and some are saying fascism, and they're equating it to Nazi-era techniques, that does not bode well for any brand. And when all you have is your brand and you're now being equated with that, it's very, very damaging.
Peter, let me ask you, though. I mean, he's doing well in the polls. This isn't new. It's the latest in his rant, but this isn't a particular departure from somebody who was behaving completely differently before, and he's increasingly been going up in the polls. And frankly, if you look elsewhere, we have NFL players who are accused of domestic violence, and sponsors still come back to them. Is it really true that this is going to hurt his business on a long-term perception? People seem to have short memories.
Essentially, you're looking at a graph. When the election is very far away and it's down here, right, we can laugh at him. As the election draws closer, we start taking a different look and we start worrying a little bit. And all of a sudden, we're looking at someone who's essentially saying, let's ban Muslims from coming into this country, as we're within 12 months of a presidential election, and we're saying, okay, that might not be okay. And it would be one thing if his attacks were always down here, but his attacks are increasingly negative, and he's targeting large swaths of the world. That's dangerous. So the support he has is currently coming from people who, ironically enough, don't fit into the lifestyle and socioeconomic class of his brands. The people who are against him actually do. So it's hurting him if he falls away from a political perspective and tries to go back to what he's doing. It will be a negative effect for him. He might not go bankrupt, although he has several times, but it will be a very, very negative effect because you're looking at someone who has basically come out and said, I hate this section of the country, I hate this section of the world. When you're in business, those are the things you avoid saying. When you're in politics, you say them differently.
That's an excellent point, that the sort of demographic of his business is very different than the voters he's appealing to with those comments. Peter, I wonder, do you think that that the rhetoric has the potential to move beyond just damaging the Trump brand and sort of have an effect on America's brand worldwide?
You know, we've survived worse. If you remember back when George Bush Jr. was president, there were some very negative emotions worldwide. We're starting to see a rise on that again. I was overseas a few weeks ago, and people, you know, the number one thing they want to talk about is, dude, what's up with Trump? Do you believe that? What's going on with him? Is that how you really think? So, you know, having to deflect those questions again gets annoying. If he became president, which is, you know, will not happen, but if he became president, yes, it would be very damaging. Canada would have to prepare for 140 million immigrants. But, you know, I think at this point right now, it's moved to the point where we've stopped taking him as a joke, and we're starting to get a little worried. But from a financial brand perspective of the Trump empire, at this point, everything he says, when politics is over and he has to go back to playing businessman, is going to hurt him a lot.
Well, one wonders if that's going to start to factor into his calculations.
Oh, no question.
Because as he says, he does have an eye on the bottom line. Peter, you'll have to come back as we watch this through the next few months of this election. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Peter Shankman for us.